We'll go ahead and get started. I know you're probably all discussing Good Language, which was probably your favorite film of the festival. Nice. This is our first panel of the day, and there'll be a second panel at 10:15 on the subject of a forum about film criticism. This panel is entitled Filmmaking in the Digital Age. We tend to put digital into everything. I'm just talking, it's kind of, you say digital media, that's really redundant. I teach at the University of Georgia. We just changed the name of our department, and we were going to change it to Department of Digital Media. And somebody said, all media is digital. Why are you putting that word there? So we changed our name, unfortunately, to the Department of Entertainment and Media Studies. The acronym for which is EMS. So we're going to rescue all the people out there. So we have a large panel. As you know, we always have large panels. And if I introduced all these people and told you who they all were, the panel would be over. We'd be done. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to give us a sentence or two about their backgrounds, who they are, what they want you to know, important about how they got to where they are. But more importantly, I want each of them to say a little bit about their own personal experiences and relationships with the digital age. Not limited to filmmaking as we narrowly define it, but you know, your relationship with your digital refrigerator is fair game as well. So we'll start with Eloise Godet. You can see the names of these people. They can also tell you who they are.
Hello. So I'm Eloise. I was playing in the movie that you may have seen 2 days ago, Goodbye to Language. Here I am as a 34-year-old woman from France, but digital age, being concerned from your generation. But I think we're all involved really deeply into this kind of technology that is overwhelming. So I can talk about the way also I was chosen in the Godard movie, because it was directly through the internet. So I was, you know, filmmaking in the digital age for an 84-year-old director too. So everyday life, actors have to also deal with the internet. Casting directors do their work through the internet. Everybody's working with networking and promoting ourselves in the digital age. It's really complicated to say. Sorry. So, well, I give.
Johan?
I'm line producer for the film that was shown yesterday. Sat on a branch reflecting on existence that we call Opinion. Working with Swedish film director Roy Andersson since film school, actually. So we did commercials in the 90s, and then we did films, and each film took about 4 years to complete. And with the first two films, analog on 35mm, visual effects or anything within digital intermediate, as it is called, to make digital effects.
Yeah.
It was what we shot came on the screen later on, 100%. And for this new film, Roy now is 72. So he's, I didn't think he was interested in trying the digital techniques, but he was. So for this new film, we shot on digital camera, of different reasons. One reason is that nowadays it's really hard to work with film because the labs are so it's you have to work digitally.
Yeah.
But we were really happy with the result, and we had one big because actual way we build the scenes in studio and do a lot of tests. And when we worked on 35, we did a test. Then you send the film to the lab, and then the day after, look at the test and see if you like what you've done. Now everyone in the team can see the image on a monitor. So if you're painting, trying to find the right color, you can try it. Look, so I think we are very happy with this.
Okay, Darian?
Hi, I'm Darian Michelle Gibson. I'm the National Director of SAG Indy. So my job is actually to go to film festivals across the country and abroad and there's about how to hire professional actors for low-budget independent film. I spend a lot of time holding hands and talking filmmakers off ledges and explaining the process of how they can get their film made, how they can hire the best talent for it, but also saying how they're going to distribute their film and the life of their film and how it's going to evolve. So I live in a digital age so where we have to keep up and we have to keep abreast of it because film is moving faster than the speed of light. And I have 2 children who only know the world in which we live now where an iPad is their chalkboard. So if I don't keep up, they're going to pass me quickly.
Okay. To your, I think our only digital native on the panel. Noah, you want to, do you know what we're talking about here?
Not really.
Why don't you tell the folks who you are, about your, and then talk about how you use technology in your everyday life.
Well, I was in the movie 99 Homes, directed by Ramin Barani, and how digital age is I like to download movies a lot on my phone and play games. That's really it. I don't really like make films or whatever. Just I like to download movies.
Do you play it at all?
Oh yeah, I play football.
Yes?
That's a micro.
Yeah,
matrix.
I'm not quite sure why I'm here at the digital age, but I'm a film producer, and I'm asked to come to talk about Harold Ramis, who was right on the edge of the digital age. I guess when we started, we used film, and then eventually we switched to digital. But I guess the thing that's interesting to me about digital now, with Noah next to me, is it's always taken me, it took you 4 years to make the movie. It usually takes me 4 years to get the resources to make a movie. Now Noah can actually make a movie with his iPhone, which is sort of a revolution. So I just spent the last couple of years making a documentary, which was released theatrically and has gotten a fair amount of attention. And a lot of it was shot with $1,500 Sony digital cameras, which allowed us to pretty much do it on our own without lighting. We use sound in the camera a lot of the time. So, you know, I'm sort of excited about the prospect that that Noah could actually go out if he had an idea and shoot a movie, and it could end up on YouTube. Movies don't no longer have to be 90 minutes. A standard that was created for some reasons, but now you can make a movie for 40 minutes or 30 minutes. And I don't know if I think it's sort of an exciting time to sort of break through the traditions that we've used to and make movies that require nobody to say yes, you're allowed to make the movie, and distribute them. If they're interesting enough, they can get seen. So I'm sort of excited about the future of movie making.
Keepers are changing.
Yeah.
Disappearing.
Yeah.
Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Davis, and I work as an attorney, but I get to also work with a bunch of great filmmakers and see things start from the very beginning. all the way through distribution. So kind of capitalizing on what Trevor said, I mean, I have folks that are able to, like you said, not get a yes from anyone but themselves, and they're able to use kind of digital platforms to release their films wherever. And I think that kind of dovetails with them creating their own audience through Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And as you get those folks, that you can directly touch them with your film and give them a link, a digital link for them to be able to look at your film. From a personal standpoint, I am probably more interested in how things really connect behind the scenes in terms of all the networking. And so this whole idea, the Internet of Everything, where everything literally, where objects are basically connected by these sensors that are all a part of them. There was this film in the, I was about to say the Austin Film Festival, that's not it, South by Southwest, called The Eyebrow. It was basically by a technology company, Cisco, that is able to gather data from the woman and be able to detect breast cancer. So, you know, that's a mix of entertainment and, you know, it's a documentary film, but it was all about how this bra was created. And so I'm pretty interested and fascinated on how everything eventually will just connect, but I'm driving on the digital part here.
Rated.
I'm not sure that it was, actually.
My name's Zach Piper. I'm a documentary filmmaker, producer. I was here last year. I produced the Life Itself, the Roger Ebert documentary. And before that, I've produced other films, one called The Interrupters. That's probably the only one that I do. On my own, my first documentary feature. It's going to take a couple more years to finish. But, you know, talking about digital, the digital revolution, the digital age, sometimes I kind of glaze over a little bit because, you know, there's just so much to talk about. I really get excited about is, and it's a little bit off of what Trevor was saying, is like he's saying you got a $1,500 camera, right, Sony camera, and shot this kind of stuff. And so I feel like the one thing that sometimes gets lost, people get so caught up in technology and talking about all these new exciting tricks that you can do with, you know, this or that, is that that's all great. But I feel like, off of what Trevor's saying, if you make a great film, that's a great story, no matter what, even if you shoot it with the VHS camera, your iPhone, we'll see it. We'll see it pretty much because, you know, all these new distribution platforms online, I mean, you can get it out there. And that's probably the most exciting thing to me about the digital age. But at the same time, I don't like to, when I think about it and talk about it, I like the idea that, you know, you don't have to use the fanciest camera, because people get so obsessed with, oh, you know, every 6 months it's a new camera that comes out, you know, but it's nice to, you know, be behind the times with technology in some sense, but maybe be ahead of things with story.
Hi, I'm Godfrey Cheshire. I'm a film critic. Digital filmmaking has concerned me on both levels. As a filmmaker, I made the documentary Moving Midway, which showed here yesterday and got a very generous response. And that film, shot on digital, I would have preferred for aesthetic reasons to shoot it on film, but it would have been kind of economically impossible because, for those of you who saw the film or who didn't, the film concerns my family's plantation in North Carolina and the decision by my cousins to move it somewhere else. And we had to shoot over many months, you know, the preparations for the move itself, which was, you know, took a long time. And it was complicated, so we had to shoot like 200 hours of stuff, and that we afforded to do that on film. On the distribution side of that, the film came out and showed in theaters, but it probably has been seen by a lot more people on Netflix, which is a good avenue to have if you're an independent filmmaker to get films out there. Unfortunately, our contract with Netflix ended in February, so I can't say run to Netflix and see the film. We're looking now at what the next digital platform will be, but part of keeping the film alive and in the culture. As a critic, I wrote a pair of articles in 1999 called "The Death of Film: The Decay of Cinema," which were published in New York Press, the paper I was writing for then, and that it was reflecting on the fact, and I hadn't seen anybody else do this, and this one reason I wrote the pieces was, I thought we were standing right on the edge of something at this point, which was the beginning of digital projection in theaters, and I thought that's only one aspect of the technology of film, which has been the technology we've used for exactly about a century at that point. It has remained pretty much unchanged. What happens when you take that away? And what happens is we're using the word film metaphorically, as soon as that happens. We talk about film, we're not even talking about film, we're talking about something else. So I reflected on that, and the film got the piece attention and have sort of stayed in current, nowhere you can go read them now. We're trying to find out a way to get them republished shortly. My friend Matt Seitz, my editor at RogerEbert.com, where I now write, did an interview with me on the 15th anniversary last year, and we published it on RogerEbert.com. It's been republished yesterday. So if you go to RogerEbert.com, you can. It's on the front page, indeed. So that's my sort of critic's view on the digital thing.
Okay. It's
Yes, I'd love some.
isn't it a bit of an anachronism to say that a website has a front page? Newspaper talk. Yeah, there you go.
Landing.
We do everything we can here actually to fight jargon, and the digital age is the most jargon-heavy age I think that we've ever encountered. Speaking about projection, when we started this festival, every film we showed was projected on film. This year, film is being projected as a 35 millimeter print. Everything else is DCP, which is what you see in your local multiplex. Except our projection, what you see.
Yeah.
It all comes down to how much it costs to buy a bulb for the projector, and cinemas don't like to spend a lot of money on that. We'll go back to Godfrey and work our way back. As a film critic, I mean, two things. How do you get your days of working for a single newspaper did, where you make a reputation? There's very little of that around anymore. And it seems to me that most of the critics I've talked to have to publish their work on a number of different websites. I mean, and more and more films are being made. I mean, how do you balance that? How do you decide who you write what for?
Well, I was funny thinking about the other day that the 1990s were probably the peak of people being able to make a living being film critics, because that was digitization and transformed print, wiped out a lot of print media and wiped out a lot of jobs. There were, in the decade, the turn of the millennium, there were lots of news articles about, and I don't think that we're ever going to return to that. I'll use this occasion to do a little fact that I'm moderating a panel after this, the next panel, about film criticism. It's a film critics forum. Become very challenging, and it's sort of a little paradoxical. It's very hard to monetize one's film criticism, but at the same time, there are more outlets for it, and you can reach more people. They were telling me that RogerEbert.com gets 7 million hits a month, number 3 site in the world or something like that, or in the country, making a living. That's right.
So let's talk to the producers on the panel and see what they have to say about. It's a double-edged sword. It doesn't cost much to make movies anymore, but you're not being paid as much for them either. Is that a true statement?
I think, at least for documentary, you were never getting paid as much, You end up doing, you going so far truly, if you were paid for the work that you did, the film would never be finished, you know. So I do, you know, definitely people are able to make films now, and this is a great, is that people are able to make documentaries much smaller budget. You know, editing system was cost, once you got all the hardware, was maybe around $90,000 or $100,000. The camera's 40, you know, the sound gear, you know, 20, 25. It just, it was inaccessible, it's not accessible to people. Now you can get, you know, you can outfit yourself. I mean, if you don't mind, you know, not being paid, you can make a film. But I think really, one way that that the digital age, and more recently, you know, this idea of like transmedia projects and things that are like more interactive, where look to these kind of ideas as something that they're trying, you know, to push, and they want filmmakers to be more innovative and do things that aren't just traditional, you know, films. The point I want to make is that fundraising is always hard for films, but you know, increasingly there are more folks who, I'm saying funders, who are looking to fund these more interactive type projects as opposed to long-form documentaries. But so it's a challenge.
Trevor, you got any thoughts on this?
You know, I guess the question of whether we get paid and how much we get paid ultimately down to how are we distributing our movies and who's seeing it. So, you know, theatrical releases of movies, I'm sad to say, seem to be a dying experience. I have a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old, and I have to beg them to go to the movies. And when I was their age, it was all I wanted to do was go see the movies. So how do we monetize, you know, how do my kids end up paying to see movies? Netflix subscriptions, and they pay at iTunes, and they watch a lot of stuff. So it's a tricky thing. I made a documentary that I was talking about, and we self-financed, and we're struggling, trying to figure out how we were actually going to make a living doing it. It was about a specific Glenn Campbell who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he went on this tour. And in the course of it, I was thinking, well, who are the special interest groups that might be interested in maybe financing part of it? And so what we figured out was people who were interested in the subject matter of our movie were interested in maybe branding their organization through the movie. So it doesn't apply to every movie, but it's part of thinking of have this expectation that one person necessarily is going to finance it because they think it's going to make them a lot of money.
Yeah. That's, yeah, you're talking another piece of jargon, marketing, N-I-C-H-E, it's a hard word to say. Some of you, last year, the documentary I produced, Bayou Maharaja, about James Booker, the New Orleans piano player. We had to raise money exactly the same way. We identified all the blues, jazz lovers. We did that through social media, through Facebook, through Twitter, and then we on Kickstarter campaigns.
And did it work? I mean, did it?
We got enough money to make the movie.
Well, that's pretty good.
But nobody, you know. But now we're facing the other thing. How can we get it out there? Because I mean, a lot of it used to be that a director would finish a film, sell it to a distributor, and be done with it. Now directors have to travel with their films. Sites like Tug will help you set up screenings for targeted markets and travel from town to town to town. It's almost a throwback to the days of vaudeville, and it's so it really is a new age. SAG Indie, I think, came about because of the economic turmoil and how much actors can get paid.
Well, certainly we came about because kind of in the age of when independent film was really fighting, heyday, if you will. Maybe we are having a new one, but in the 70s, people wouldn't hire professional actors. They were scared to death of dealing with the union and what it would mean to a person who had very little money. And at that time, there were contracts that were made. Filmmakers could hire professional actors for very little money, but it was still a pretty big monolithic bureaucratic system, and everybody was still pretty afraid of them. So my job is actually not to sell anybody on the union, but just to explain the possibilities and to explain how those contracts work so that anyone making a film with very little money still hire somebody who is trained and professional and hopefully has a face, maybe even a name, in their small film, and hopefully that will help them garner attention and distribution, etc. So that's pretty much what we do, is we kind of walk through and say, if you're making a film for $100,000 or even $10,000, or if you're making a short as your calling card, this is what a professional actor is actually going to cost you. And it helps to build the budget. I'm a function of than actors, because people need to know what it's really going to cost and what the paperwork looks like. You know, so many people, the stories, the more outrageous, the more people believe them. So my job is to say your dog is safe. The paperwork will look like this. It will ask you to do this. It will cost you this amount of money, and be prepared for these following things. If you follow these rules, you'll be fine. And sometimes it doesn't work for the actor, and they decide not to make the decision for your film. But I think what that does is that the bigger kind of hurdle I think we're facing right now is it's a lot less expensive to make a movie in a lot of different ways. The camera, just the whole system. But once you've finished it, where does it go? The distribution part of it has become a little more convoluted. Abilities have changed, but nobody really has as tight a grip on what is actually going to happen. And so the whole monetization of distribution is still really confusing. There are people who are trying to find transparency and like how much will you really make if you sell your film to this group rather than that group. It's not done yet. Like the study is really just starting. I know Sundance Institute has teamed up with someone who is asking filmmakers to call and give them their information, like under very kind of quiet terms. What did you spend? What did you spend on marketing? What did you get back? How much money did you building this kind of information? But right now, I think they've had like 100 filmmakers. We have no idea so far.
I mean, in this age of big data, where everything is quantifiable, you would think that transparency would be easier to achieve, but actually the contrary is happening.
This is the least transparent part of filmmaking so far.
Yeah. Noah, wake you or scare you or anything. But have you thought about making films yourself?
Well, actually, when I get older, I've actually thought of that I might want to become a director or a producer, because I like to make films like on my phone. Like there's an app called iMovie, and you can make like trailers and like movies, and so that's pretty fun. And I'd love to do that when I get older, maybe.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, you don't have to get older to do it. You can. What's the longest film you've made?
Like 1 minute.
And how long did it take you to do that?
Like 10 minutes.
And is it any good?
No.
Have you tried to sell it to a distributor?
No.
Those are things you should think about. We have two Europeans down at this end. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, because in Europe it's differently, they're state-supported or state funds to support filmmaking that we don't really have in this country. And if you could talk a little bit about the process of, Johan, is it a simple process for you to find your movie and your movies? I guess we'll just start with that.
I think it has been relatively not simple. It has been a process for us to find money, and we find money films in Sweden and in Germany and France. Also, we get funding from European Union. So the Swedish Film Institute, and you can get funds from them. And for one of the films, You the Living, the system is that there are two people who can supply funds for feature films. So if you have contact with one person and he says no, you can go to the other one, and that person can say yes or no. And so we had quite an easy, except in Sweden, because those two persons said no, or after a long time.
Application process to find money, is that an online process?
Yeah.
So you're no longer traveling around from country asking for money?
We did some just pitching project and so on,
There's a lot to say.
You-
There's
you
so
go
many
ahead and
subjects
say it.
here. It's like
No, I know, it's a broad subject. So any area of the subject you want to talk about?
identity, cost, survival, how to make diversity, and all this in the casting, production, technology. All this is just and also downloading, like how to survive when you have all this possibility to download all that. So there's something to talk. I don't know. And as a French people, we're all.
I see you're making notes here.
Yeah, I am, because it's just like all these interesting things to talk about.
I mean, you're very savvy on social media. You're active on Twitter and Facebook. How do you use that to advance your career?
I
or
don't know.
do
I don't even know if it's useful, really. But you know, it's a pleasure to share things. Not even in a specific goal of promoting myself. It's just a way of emphasizing the present, maybe sometime.
Anyone, if a director wants to find you to see to look at your work or to see what, you're very easy to find on.
Yeah, and that's
Amazing.
the way Godard found me also. So I guess that's helping a little bit.
Nate, let me ask a question. I experienced something interesting being at the film. I watched Eloise and Johan's movies and loved both of them, but as an American filmmaker struggling to try and figure out money and monetize my movies, I was struck by the fact that those movies did not feel like they were created to seduce audiences into spending money. They felt like, you know, in the true tradition of auteurs, filmmakers who had that if the audience likes it, that's fine. If the audience doesn't like it, that's too bad. And I think as a filmmaker, I don't know if you guys would agree, it's like, wow, how the hell do they get to do that? I mean, I was truly envious of the uncompromising quality of those movies and spent trying to give people whatever idea money. And that's a pretty radical difference. And
I mean,
I want to move to Europe.
It's a philosophy. It's a difference.
I actually heard a story. I'm not sure it's true, but just the other week I heard that Godard applied for funds from European Union, and they the request, but no idea or no script or anything. And then they called him and said that when we need a treatment or something, and then but then he said, I don't need to. I'm Godard. You just have to give me the money.
Yeah. which is true.
And get any money from that fund.
Mm-hmm.
But am I correct in assuming that, and this is, I think, the difference, a lot of that money is what money that it does not have to be they're not treated as, it's not treated as an investment in the film, grant to help you make the film.
I think it's both. Some of the grants you have to pay back, and some you don't have to pay back.
Yeah.
I could just jump in on this too. So the way that I work with this production company called Cartemquin Films in Chicago, and they've been around for about 50 I think next years, and it's all social issue documentary. Now it's a nonprofit, so what we're able to do is we get grants. So we apply for grants to fund the films, and more recently we've gotten a slightly different model where we try to find individual people of means who can film. Sometimes it's to be paid back, other times it's not. But the other we are able to complete the film is we do pre-sales. So, I'll say in the example of Life Itself, the Roger Ebert film, we were able to move forward with that because we had CNN came in as a partner early on. They gave about half the budget, so we were able to begin making the film, not knowing where we were going to get the rest of the money, but we felt confident that we could get it, so we just began. All this to say that, everyone wants to make money with the film, but for us, we're drawing a salary, we're being paid, we're being able to pay bills to complete the film, we're not the accomplishment to finish the film. Because it's hard enough to raise the money that you need, and a lot of times, even I can't think of any film that I've ever worked on where we actually raise the full budget. We always come up a little bit short, and we find a way to do it and get it across the finish line. And then if after that, then it's it's sort of like gravy.
But you used Indiegogo, which is
we did
similar to Kickstarter.
We did
to raise $150,000.
That's right.
Something.
In France, we receive so many mails of fundraising right now. All our friends are doing their movies with social fundraising. It's crazy.
Yeah. But the trouble with I think a lot of European countries are moving closer and closer to the American model, and it's becoming more difficult for the Godards and the Roy Andersons to get money from their for anyone actually, and which is unfortunate because these auteurs that you're talking about.
Don't worry, Godard. Godard gets his money from the, Canal Plus, and there's for a certain part of filmmaking, but we don't have to work.
But you got paid quite a handsome salary for your
Not
work.
really.
But I suspect he did, right? What Zach is talking about with CNN, the same thing happens in Europe. Television companies into feature films so that they buy the rights to show it on television at a later date. And what we're finding in this country is some of the streaming companies are now starting to make films. Netflix, Amazon now have production arms, and they're making films. So, anybody have anything to say before we take questions from the audience? No?
Desperate.
Anything that you want to say that's not desperate?
Okay.
If there's a microphone, so if you have questions for anyone on the panel or want to talk about the subject, just step.
I would just like to ask the two actors on the panel, just tell me a little bit about what it's like to act in a digital age. When you have the Godard film, you only need like 5 people there on the set, and you work with digital cameras, 3D. And then Noah, I think I read in your bio that you were in the SpongeBob movie, acting with these digital characters that weren't there. So I'd just like to ask a little bit about those experiences.
no time between the takes because you don't have to reload the camera. You don't have to check the gate. So it goes faster and faster, and even if it was 3D, for example, I didn't see the real difference with a normal numeric camera. It was just nothing much changing for me.
I didn't really pay attention to what equipment they were using, but what they did was Patrick landed on my hand and I had ice cream, and he won my ice cream, and so they had to draw a bunch of dots and I had to act like he was there. So it was pretty different just talking to nothing.
Did nothing you?
Yeah.
I mean, was someone doing the other voice, so you had something to act to at all? Or?
No, nothing. Just he didn't say any. Patrick didn't say anything in the scene, so.
Are you enjoying acting?
I love it.
Oh, look, we have another question.
I run a small film festival in Milton, Ontario, and of course in Canada, as in most things, we're sort of halfway between the US and Europe, which means that we make nearly enough from commercial distribution, and we don't make nearly enough from government funds, so nobody makes any money. But sort of a comment and a question. I don't know if you're aware, but I mean, for documentary filmmakers in particular, there are a lot of options right now, particularly in southern Ontario. One is the Hot Docs Film Festival has purchased the Bloor Theatre, which means they have documentaries running all year long, which is awesome. And also there's the TIFF Film Circuit, which distributes films to through, and they show them in small theaters all across the country. There's 180 groups that do monthly screenings. So, and we're actually part of that. So, if you want to distribute your little film in Canada, you've got a lot of options. The question is, in terms of film distribution, I know that I'm finding with the TIFF Film Circuit, particularly in DCP and in DVD Blu-ray, we show in an art center, so we can't possibly afford a DCP projector. So we have to wait until things come out in DVD and Blu-ray, which can get complicated and don't get to show some of the. But there is more stuff coming out simultaneously. If you feel that's a good thing, and if you sort of how you feel, distribution and production of these films in ways that smaller centers and smaller places that don't have DCP projectors can show them.
I can jump in on that real quick. So a film that worked on before, about 4 years ago when it was released, called The Inner. That was a key part of how we distributed that film, because we were not able to, it had a theatrical run of sorts, but it wasn't in any way, it really was one that started slowly. I mean, it played in New York one weekend, and then it was extended, and then other cities were adding, and then over the course of 4 or 5 months, it played in many cities across the US and Canada. One of the things for Canada, we only had a US, I'll bring this back around to answer your question, but we only had a US distributor. We had to self-book. We booked our own theatrical release in Canada, which was an interesting process. You have to go to each province and get it rated. It's kind of, it's great, and we were able to go to these smaller places. But I think for independent films and documentaries in particular about an issue, I mean, I'll tell you, even Life Itself, we simultaneously created Blu-rays floating around, but we had Blu-rays in the event that a smaller place would need it. I mean, Magnolia handled this, but that was a key part of The Interrupters. We made a few DCPs, but I'm telling you, we mostly sent around Blu-rays because that's where people were at the time. I still think people are there because it costs so much to get those, to be able to have something that can interface with a DCP.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I must tell you, though, we tried to get Life Itself for our film festival, which was at the end, and it was this weird window where we weren't allowed to show it because the theatrical release and then the CNN was going to show it.
Right. There was a blackout.
Okay, and Blu-ray the Blu-ray is really very, very good. We've shown Blu-rays, we haven't told you about that, but we've shown Blu-rays at the Virginia Theater when things have gone wrong with DCP.
And actually, our projectionist he doesn't even like using Blu-rays anymore because things can go horribly wrong. He actually gets stuff off of iTunes and projects it to
Yeah.
iTunes.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. Thank you, everybody, for coming and talking to us, first off. I'm currently taking classes to get a degree in marketing with the goal of, I consider myself an avid film fan, and especially of independent and documentary films. And over the last 20 years, I've read about all the different films to their audiences that would be interested. And I know you sort of talked all around this some, but I just wondering if any of you had any suggestions for someone going into marketing. Is there anything missing from the marketing side of filmmaking that you wish was present?
I come back to the idea of big data, which I don't understand at all. But in terms of, I know that advertising agencies, PR companies, and picture companies are using the big data to find audiences, to understand what people want to see and how they want to, and teach them to do that. If you understand big data, and if you have that kind of mind, that's actually where you can make a lot of money. Job.
Nobody quite understands big data yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, see, I was afraid you'd ask me what big data. It's what the National Security Agency does with and Google. It just collects all this information about everybody, what your tastes, your wishes. Even if you don't know what they are, they can tell you what they are, and they're very sophisticated systems that analyze that.
I'm actually going to go a different way for that, because when I started out, my first job was heading the film department for Russell Simmons for Deaf Pictures, and he came out of music, obviously, budgets, and are not going to be necessarily engaged in kind of big data. We started looking at things a little differently, and really what we found was being effective in, it's not going to be a vast marketing, but it's going to be very niche, is that people were street teaming again. And that's kind of what has become, is that old school street teaming of getting the poster out and talking about it and putting posters on signage and things like that people were going to smaller regional festivals, but he started winning awards there. So that kind of started his trajectory. But it wasn't, Sundance. It was the big ones that could completely pull him up. So doing something that I thought was brilliant. He had actors in it that were not big names, but certainly work. One was on Showtime, another had just been in a bunch of different movies, had a little bit of a following. So then he started doing kind of what I called the prodigal son tour. One actor was from Indiana, from Gary, Indiana, so they went to the Gary, Indiana Film Festival, and then they brought their actor back home. One was from Boston, they went to Boston. They four-walled in all the cities that their actors were from. Then they'd hit Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, but they managed to build their own steam by getting coverage and reviews, because they were bringing people to those cities that had an active interest in that person and in that film and in those people doing really well. And their social media would start 3 weeks before. Hey everybody, we're coming to Boston, get your people together. The would call all their friends, their family, their high school. And it was so kind of low tech. Even though, it was very grassroots, but it worked that they kept getting for 2 weeks here, a week there, 2 weeks there, because they're wanting to see their own folk. So you can look at it big, but don't forget the grassroots as well.
Thank you.
Hillary?
I think that just can work in America because, for example, in France, we don't support our home folks as much as you do. Like, if you say to people from Lyon, hey, he's coming back to Lyon, like, nobody cares. I think that's really what's good in America. You have this thing that is supporting.
It doesn't work in LA or New York because everybody's like so.
Okay.
But, you know, other places, it can work.
But it requires time and money on the part of the filmmakers to do that.
Time. I mean, some money, but really it's time
Well,
to reach out.
And then I would say, the important thing to remember is that movie is not going to make money in that theatrical run. That movie is only going to make money in the ancillary. Movie, unless somebody here has had a different to actually make by having your movie play around the country in theaters. The reason that we release our movies theatrically from a financial standpoint is so those movies get reviewed, so people talk about them, so there's a buzz, so that when we go to Netflix and iTunes and all those places, or so when you guys do, oh, wait a minute, I remember hearing about that movie playing in the film festival.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
And the other scary thing is that theatrical, as I said earlier, is really a dying thing. I mean, I don't know what it's like in this town, but you know, there are fewer theaters, fewer people are going to the movies, and so as far as marketing, if I was a young person thinking about marketing, I would forget about theatrical, how to market theatrical. I'd figure out how do you market digitally. How do you get people to go to Netflix? How do you get people to go to your iTunes? Because, you know, you go on Netflix, there's a million movies.
Yes, it does.
You think.
Well, they don't, but they think they do.
Exactly.
Sometimes they're right.
Okay.
Nate, just another part of that, just from a not purely legal, but somewhat, in that filmmakers also should think about the derivatives that come from that particular film. So we think about film singularly. Okay, we're going to distribute this film, we're going to make money off this film, and then that's it. But there are other ways, almost in a transmedia type of way, to make money from that film. For example, with a documentary. I have a client who it's the documentary that could, because it just keeps giving back, keeps giving back. Now someone a narrative on this documentary. It's on television. Someone now, you know, it's every facet of it. I think the filmmaker should think about it from that standpoint, or someone else does. Like when you're making the film or when it's made, think about what are those other derivative projects that could come from that particular film. Same way with, you know, the folks that are in the film, the character by what's the subject matter. The more breadth you have in thinking about the film as not just one project, but maybe multiple projects or multiple facets of a project, then that opens up, I think, other streams of income or that may come from that film. Film festivals, I mean, you know, again, this one particular film, I mean, it's been everywhere. It's been products, and people keep coming to this filmmaker just based on this one film.
Why don't you tell us what the film is?
Yeah.
What's the film, Michelle?
Oh, Versailles 73. It's a fashion documentary film that was about one event at the Palace of Versailles. Basically, these fashion designers were competing, Americans with the French. And it's all about one event, but that film has just continued to stay out there. It's been marketed with Marc Jacobs, you know, it's been in Fashion Week. It's about to be on TV again, you know, and so we just keep getting calls about this one particular film. So.
And you know, and films can be diced and sliced. You can take a 10-minute segment out of a documentary film and turn it into something that you might be able to sell to Coca-Cola to promote, because advertisers are now looking to 10-minute films because nobody watches commercials anymore. They just so. We have time for actually only one more question. That would be IFV's question.
Hey, this question might be a little out of place, but I want your honest opinion about this one. So, after the superhero movies bubble bursts, where do you think will be the next big genre, the next big thing? You know, where does the industry gravitate towards? Because I really am curious about that.
I would say don't look anytime soon, maybe not in your lifetime. Mark Harris wrote a big thing about this on Grantland, and projecting forward that a lot of the studios are doing these things for many years out. They are planning their superhero franchises to basically dominate the world for the next decade or two. So what would come after that? I don't know, maybe World War III or something.
And more importantly, they dominate the few screens that are left where you can actually see movies in a theater. I know Roger always said that he wanted to be surprised in movies, and I think the in the 3D animation, the superhero, the action movies, I think they've reached a point of saturation. It's hard for us to be surprised by anything we see on the screen anymore, and what comes next has to be something that once again takes us by surprise.
This might be a good transition into the next panel, Nate.
Yeah.
I mean, if you'll stick around, I'll put that question to the critics that are up here, because I'd love to hear what some of them have to say about it.
Well, listen, let's thank our panelists, and please stick around. The next will start in 10 minutes, and the next film will start at 1 o'clock.